You ever feel like something out there is watching you? Not an animal, not a person, just something. Welcome to my viewers, and thanks for joining me tonight. If you love unsettling, real-life horror stories from the woods, you're in the right place. Let me tell you about the time a fun summer camping trip with my friends turned into something I still can't explain. Summer is the greatest season by a long shot. That's a hill I'll die on any day. My love for the summer doesn't revolve around partying or drinking, as you may expect. But nature, warmer weather, and the outdoors are inseparable in my opinion. And I guarantee you that when the heat rolls through, I spend more hours outside than inside. It was a warm night in mid-June, a few summers ago when this happened. I was 17 or 18 at the time. For context, there's a massive nature preserve near my house. When I say massive, I mean it sits close to 1,000 acres in size. To this day, there are still parts of it that I'm positive I haven't explored. Two of my friends and I agreed to spend a night camping in those woods. Technically, camping there was strictly forbidden and borderline illegal. But we figured that there was no chance someone would catch us in this dense forest. We just had to trek as deeply as possible. Chuck was the camping fanatic of the group. I'm telling you, this kid loved cosplaying as a Boy Scout and probably knew close to 100 different knots. Our other friend Jackson always supplied the drinks. If we were sober, he was unhappy. That's just how things went when Jackson was involved. I remember the feeling of the gentle summer breeze blowing through my hair as the three of us packed up Jackson's car. The weather was too cold, not too hot. A few beers later, the three of us found ourselves lugging camping equipment through the woods at like 11:30. I can't lie, was feeling the alcohol start to hit me as we marched along. Chuck always carried this industrial-grade flashlight with him, so the darkness of the forest wasn't much of an issue. As much as I enjoyed the outdoors, though, traversing through thick woods at this hour was a bit creepy, even with Chuck's flashlight on hand. After close to half an hour of straight walking, the three of us found ourselves in a small flat clearing that was an ideal spot to set up camp. We pitched our tent as per Chuck's instruction and set our chairs up. The fire was the next step. Chuck once again took the lead on this, and after a few more minutes, we had a pretty decent fire going. Jackson reached into his bag and tossed me another drink. He then grabbed his JBL speaker and started playing some music. The vibe was perfect, and we must have been talking and drinking for a good 2 hours. We were all pretty drunk at that point, and I could tell the other guys were just about ready to pack it up for the night. Jackson turned the music down and started collecting discarded beer cans. Just then, a deafening whistle pierced the silence. I nearly jumped out of my seat, going from drunken haze to high alert in a matter of seconds. I don't know how to describe it. The whistle was abnormally loud, but still sounded distant. Jackson quickly shut the speaker off, and the three of us sat in silence as we exchanged concerned looks. I could feel my heartbeat pounding through my chest. We sat there frozen, in place for what seemed like forever, listening intently to us, but there was nothing. It almost seemed quieter now than it had when we first got there, like eerily quiet. Not even the normal wood sounds you come to anticipate. I used that time to play my memory of the whistle back in my head. It definitely wasn't an animal's noise. The best way I can describe it is a standard whistle you'd hear at a ballpark. Chuck finally broke the silence, quietly urging us to pack up and leave. Jackson and I disagreed with that plan though. We might risk encountering whoever made the noise, which I was beyond terrified of. It was past 3 a.m. at this point, and an encounter this late would only mean trouble. Chuck hypothesized that whoever made that noise was probably aware of our presence, which was a chilling thought. I didn't know what to do. On one hand, staying put violated every survival instinct I had. Packing up and leaving at this hour didn't seem like a much better option either, though we finally agreed to wait it out. I went to put the fire out, but Chuck cautioned me against it, saying that a fire would repel any dangerous animals. Only then did the true gravity of the situation smack me in the face. We were literally miles away from any civilization. It was 3 a.m., and there was an unknown entity somewhere in the darkness. Another 10 minutes or so passed, and we had resumed talking, but at a much lower volume, with no music. I don't think any of us felt safe going to sleep just yet, though. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it something small flew over the darkness of Jackson's shoulder and landed directly in the fire. It was a firecracker. I screamed bloody murder as it started sparkling in the fire, and Chuck cursed as he sprung up out of his chair and bolted into the darkness. Jackson and I scrambled to follow, leaving all of our stuff behind. We caught up with Chuck, whose flashlight was beaming wildly through the woods as he frantically sprinted. We ran until we couldn't anymore, and Jackson keeled over and threw up. Chuck shut the light off, and the three of us stood there panting, trying to figure out if we were being followed. To my surprise, it didn't seem like anyone followed us. I don't think I've ever been so afraid though. Why in the world would someone have done that? We needed to figure out what to do. Jackson wanted to just find our way out of the woods and never come back. But Chuck was reluctant to leave all of his camping gear behind. Plus, he reminded us the fire was still active. I was dumbfounded. How could he be concerned with forest fires after what had just happened? Eventually, I agreed with Chuck that we should at least check on the site. After all, no one had actually chased us, so there was a slight possibility that whoever threw that firecracker was just playing a cruel prank. Chuck was a navigational expert and was actually able to retrace our footsteps. I could make out the glow of the fire as we quietly approached. Before I could get any closer, though, Jackson put a hand in front of me and pointed with a horrified look on his face. I strained my eyes to make out the sight in the distance. What I saw is probably the most terrifying thing I'd ever laid eyes on. There were three people sitting motionlessly in our chairs like statues. The one whose face I could see looked lifeless, and his mouth was hung open. I was afraid to move. What were they even doing? I thought, realizing that they weren't even talking. This was not normal. The three of us watched for a little while, longer before deciding to back off. We turned to leave, but Jackson's foot clipped a rock, causing him to curse in frustration. Within seconds, the glow from the fire abruptly went dark, as if it had been covered with a cloak. It was freakishly fast. We didn't stick around another second. We again sprinted away from the site, but this time we could hear footsteps crashing. Behind us, we didn't stop. This time, we bolted out of the woods and ran all the way to Jackson's car. By some miracle, we weren't followed out of the woods. None of us spoke on the drive back, each of us lost in our thoughts. The next day, Chuck insisted we return to the site in the daylight to collect his belongings. Jackson wanted nothing to do with that, but I agreed to accompany Chuck. After some searching, we eventually found the site, which looked mostly untouched, that is, until we got a little closer and noticed the putrid smell coming from Chuck's tent. He unzipped it, and we found a dead, rotting rat. It was sickening. I took the hint and haven't been back to that preserve. Have you ever caught someone watching you only to later realize they've been doing it for a long time? Welcome back to the channel, my viewers. Tonight's story is a deeply unsettling one about late-night workouts, a stranger with an eerie smile, and a secret that was hiding just a few feet behind me the whole time. Let's get into it. Since this ongoing issue started about a month ago, the first real incident was just before that. Let me give you some background first. I'm 24 years old and I still live with my parents. We're not financially stable by any means, and just about every dollar I earn goes back into the household. That alone can be frustrating, but the tension at home doesn't help. My parents and I don't get along great. We argue often, and when I'm not working or hanging out with friends, I usually stay holed up in my room. I'm not telling you this to play the victim, but it's relevant, because fitness has always been my escape, my coping mechanism. There's a public park about 10 minutes from my house, a place with pull-up bars, dip stations, and calisthenics equipment. I go there when I need to blow off steam, especially during the summer, when the heat makes it easier to push through a workout. But I usually go at night, when the crowds thin out and it's just me, my thoughts, and the warm hum of cicadas. That night was no different. My parents were arguing again and I slipped out to avoid the noise. It was sweltering out, probably still 85 degrees even at 10 p.m. I stepped out of my house into the thick, humid air and got into my old white Corolla. The windows creaked as I rolled them down and let the breeze cut through the heat. I drove, with music off, just listening to the summer night. When I pulled into the park lot, it was empty, totally deserted. It felt peaceful in that way. Summer nights sometimes do, where the city glows in the distance and everything else is still. I walked up to the bars and started doing pull-ups, not counting reps, just going until my arms gave out. That's when I felt something, a tingle, a weird subconscious warning. I turned around, and there he was, just standing there. A tall, unkempt man was standing no more than a foot from my face. I jumped back, heart thudding, and nearly screamed. He laughed aloud, broken. Smoker's laugh, and told me he didn't mean to scare me. His smile was ... wrong, like it was stretched too wide, like it didn't belong on a person. He told me he lived here, and that he'd seen me working out here many times. Said he wanted me to teach him. I gave him the bare minimum, a polite nod and an excuse that I was just finishing up. I climbed back on the bar, trying to ignore the feeling that his eyes were carving holes into my back. Then I heard it. He said my full name, not just my first name, my entire name. I stopped mid-pull-up and dropped down. "What?" I asked, stunned. But he just stood there smiling, head cocked, eyes bulging with a weird joy I can't even begin to describe. I didn't say another word. I walked, not ran, back to my car, doing my best not to show fear. I didn't look back until I reached the door. He was copying my workout, doing slow, trembling pull-up attempts in the exact same position I had just been in. I drove home fast, heart pounding. Was I overreacting? Hallucinating? Maybe I'd misheard him, but the fear in my stomach said otherwise. The next morning, I left for work early and was the first one out the door. That's when I noticed a plain white envelope on the doorstep with my name on it. No stamps, no return address. I tossed it on the passenger seat, planning to look at it later. It was only during my lunch break that I finally opened it. Inside were 10 photos, all of me. Me in my car. Me at work. Me at work. Me doing pull-ups at the park. One was a photo of my house from the sidewalk, but the worst one, the one that made me gag, was taken through my bedroom window. It was of me sleeping, lying sideways, completely unaware. My blinds were halfway down, and the angle of the photo meant someone had to be right outside my window. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was being watched right that second. I left work immediately, not caring about the consequences, and drove straight to the police station. I handed over the photos, explained everything, gave them a description of the man, and told them about our encounter at the park. They took it seriously, at least at first. My parents were shaken too. It was one of the rare moments we actually stood on the same side, but it didn't end there. 2 nights later, I woke up at 3 a.m. to knocking. Not loud, just ... persistent. I didn't open the door. I couldn't bring myself to, but I sat in the dark, clutching a baseball bat, listening until the sound finally stopped. The next morning, a sticky note was stuck to my car window. It had a heart drawn in red Sharpie. I went back to the police, but they said, without surveillance or more proof, there wasn't much they could do. They agreed to open a stalking investigation, but I haven't heard anything since. That was nearly 4 weeks ago. I don't go to the park anymore. I don't sleep without locking every door and window. My parents are looking into moving, but it's hard. We're already barely making ends meet. Until something changes, I'm living in fear. I wake up constantly at night thinking I hear footsteps or see shadows near my window. So yeah, ... I still don't know if I imagined him saying my name that first night, but someone knew it, and someone still does. Thanks for sticking with me through this one. If you've ever experienced something similar, let me know in the comments. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and if you ever feel watched ... you probably are. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss next week's horror drop. Good night, everyone, and check your windows before you go to sleep. Have you ever shown up to a party only to realize you were completely alone until someone or something found you? What started as a chill night turned into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. Welcome to my viewers tonight. I'm sharing a story that still gives me chills. Let's get into it. This happened to me last summer when I was 22. I wasn't exactly the social butterfly type. If I ever ended up out of the house, it was usually because my more outgoing friends dragged me out. That night was no different. Well, it was supposed to be. My buddy Philip invited me to a house party around 8 p.m. It was a last-minute thing, but I had no plans, so I reluctantly said yes. I knew if I bailed, I'd never hear the end of it. Honestly, the idea of being surrounded by strangers still seemed better than being stuck in my room all night. Philip lived a few towns over, so we agreed to drive separately. He dropped me the address, and I started heading over. But just as I pulled onto the street, he bailed. A last-minute text saying he couldn't make it. I was beyond pissed. Who ditches their friend at a random party like that? I debated turning around, but after driving all that way, I figured why not? I knocked on the door, expecting awkward vibes, but the host, Randy, answered with a big smile. He was the chill type, super welcoming without trying too hard. He introduced me to a few people, and before I knew it, I was actually enjoying myself. The drinks were flowing, the music was bumping, and the people were way friendlier than I expected. By around 2 a.m., I definitely had too much to drink. My stomach was flipping, and the world felt like it was spinning sideways. I needed to get away from the crowd and breathe. I went upstairs to find a bathroom, No luck. All of them were occupied. I kept walking, somehow ending up on the top floor. Blame the booze, but the layout of the house felt like a weird maze. Opened a door near the end of the hallway and stepped into what looked like an attic or a dusty storage space. No lights, but I found a window in the far corner and pushed it open, letting in the breeze. That fresh air was the only thing stopping me from puking. For a while, I just stood there with my head out the window, breathing, listening to the quiet outside. It was peaceful until I heard footsteps on the roof. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, but the sound of feet on shingles was unmistakable. Curiosity and poor judgment got the best of me. I climbed out onto the roof, under the moonlight. I saw them, two masked figures slipping out of another upstairs window, carrying what looked like bags. It clicked immediately. They were robbing the house. My heart started racing. I slipped on a loose shingle, the sound echoing through the night. One of the burglars snapped his head in my direction. We locked eyes. He tapped the other guy, and they started moving toward me. Adrenaline kicked in. I ducked low and slowly backed away, trying not to make noise. As they moved toward the sloped part of the roof, I fumbled for my phone. But my fingers were clumsy. Dropped it. The clatter gave away my position. "Who's there?" One of them hissed. Panicked, I grabbed the nearest loose shingle and threw it. It didn't hit them, but it startled one enough that he lost his footing and tumbled off the edge, landing hard in the bushes below. The other guy bolted, jumping onto a tree and scrambling down like a damn spider monkey. I rushed to the edge and saw the one burglar on the ground, groaning in pain. Then I heard the distant sound of sirens. Someone else had apparently called the cops, probably for noise. I climbed back inside, trying to keep it together, and made my way downstairs. The party was still going, totally unaware. I found Randy and pulled him aside. "Randy, there's been a break-in. Two guys were on the roof." His face went pale. "Are you serious?" He called the cops immediately. As it turned out, a neighbor had already reported the party for being too loud, which explained the perfect timing. The cops showed up, and I gave my statement. They arrested the injured guy, but the other burglar vanished. The party cleared out quickly after that, and I tried to act sober, but Randy saw right through me. He still thanked me over and over, but that wasn't the end of it. A few months later, I was at Philip's house playing games when he got a call from Randy. He invited us over for beers. I didn't even know the two of them were close. When I pulled up to Randy's house, I noticed something was different. Every window and the front door had been replaced. Heavy-duty stuff, steel frames, way more secure. Down in the basement, Randy greeted me like an old friend. He thanked me again and shared what had happened since that night. Apparently, the burglar they caught refused to talk. No name, no accomplice. Info nothing. A few days later, Randy's family started getting creepy letters. Some included pictures of them, taken from outside the house. One night, Randy's mom spotted a car circling the block at 1 a.m. Then they found things moved around in their backyard. That's when Randy's dad went full fortress, mud new doors, reinforced windows, surveillance, all of it. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a random break-in. Someone had been watching, and maybe still was, with summer creeping up. Again, I have a feeling this story isn't over. If anything else happens, I'll be back to tell you. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this creepy true story. If you've ever had a party night turn into something way darker, Let me know in the comments side. Love to hear your stories. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Stay safe out there.